बिस्मिल्लाह रहमान रहीम अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह रब्बिल आलमीन वस्सलातु वस्सलामु अला अशरफिल अंबिया'i वल मुरसलीन नबीना मुहम्मद व अला आलिहि व सहबिहि अजमाइन रब्बि इश्रह ली सदरी व यस्सिर ली अमरी वाहलुल उक़दतम मिन लिसानी यफ़क़हू क़ौली। अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। Today we'll talk about assets, enterprise assets management. And in this enterprise asset management, we'll talk about internal orders and assets, fixed assets. So especially those part of accounting which are related to enterprise asset management, that is included in this chapter. So let's see what we have. So we'll see the processes between internal order and fixed assets and enterprise assets management. So if you see on this screen, we have an internal order which belongs to managerial accounting, or you can say controlling, that is doing the settlement with financial accounting, and financial accounting is linked with the fixed assets management. So basically, internal order is used to collect the actual cost. And especially when we talk about fixed assets, so it is collecting the cost for different classes of assets, for example, building or computer equipment or softwares, furniture, lands, machinery, vehicles. So these are different classes of assets, and we are using internal order to collect the costs. So when we do the internal order settlement, actually we transfer the cost that we collected on that internal order to the assets master record. So that is what the whole purpose is, to collect the cost and then settle the cost with the fixed assets at the period end or when the project is closed. So now at final settlement, so these costs represent the purchases or the gain on the value of the assets. So for example, we are constructing a building that is by fixed assets, and all the cost is happening that I'm collecting on the internal order. At the end of the day, when the project is closed, I will transfer all my internal order cost to that fixed asset. That is the building. So in this way, when we look at the accounting, then we'll see, okay, this building has all these transactions, and that these transactions construct the cost. So that is what our the task of internal order is. So let's see, create a fixed assets master record. So when we create the fixed assets master records, each asset belongs to a company code and the business area. So that is what we declared at the time of creation of assets. So all posting that we made for that assets, whether we are purchasing or we are doing the retirement of the assets or we are doing some depreciation on that assets, all these transactions are applied to that company code as well as to that business area. So you can say that all postings or all transactions related to the fixed assets are linked with that or happening in that company code or in that business area. In addition to that, you can assign the assets to different controlling objects. For example, you can assign this object to a cost center. You can assign the object fixed assets to the internal order or activity type. So you can do that as well. So what will happen when you assign the fixed asset to a particular cost center, then any transaction happening on that in that cost center, that you can settle down with that fixed asset. For example, we have a photocopy machine that is a fixed asset, and that is also a cost center because we are purchasing the toners, we are purchasing the maintenance of that, we are purchasing the printer paper of that, we are having like electricity bill cost, we are having human resource cost on that, photocopy machine. So all those costs we are collecting in a cost center. So if we assign that assets to a cost center or to an internal order, then basically at the end of the day, we can settle down those costs to other cost objects. Okay, so that is also possible, that we can assign the fixed assets to the controlling objects, and the controlling objects are cost center, internal orders, or activity types. Another important thing is assets class. Now, assets class is the main criteria for defining an asset. So, we can have different classes for different assets. When we say classes, mean different categories of the accounts. So we can have, for example, we can have one account like 1,000 that is an asset. Then all the assets will come inside, like building, machinery, equipment, everything, a vehicle, everything will be under 1,000. But you cannot have the segregation. If you want to display your reports in your balance sheet, that okay, building expenses should be on a separate line, then machinery should be on a separate line, and business equipment or vehicle on a separate line in the report, that will not be possible if you just have one class of assets that is, you can say that asset. So that is not possible. So if you want that all those items, all those classes that you want on a separate line, so you should have a separate class of that assets. So in this case, if you see here, building, we have a machinery, we have a business equipment. If you have three classes in balance sheet, you will have three different lines for these classes. So and each asset is assigned to an asset class. So if it is a building, it will be assigned to a building class. If it is a machinery, it will be assigned to machinery class. Here we have a statement that assets that do not appear on the same line item in the balance sheet, or they must have a separate assets class. They must be assigned to a separate asset class. In addition to that, we need two special classes. Okay, so one for assets under construction and one for low value assets class. So these are two compulsory classes that we must have in our SAP system. Now, monitoring cost using internal orders. So if you see here, we are having like 4 different kinds of internal orders. Actually, it's the same internal order, but we have just named it differently for our convenience purposes. Otherwise, internal order is the same. The purpose is same. The purpose is to collect the cost of cost, temporary cost that you can settle down at the end of the accounting period. So even whether it's a overhead cost or investment order or accrual order, the whole purpose is to collect the cost, So now if you see here, we have different internal orders. We can use these internal orders for different purposes. For example, we can use it for tracking the cost, we can use it for tracking the revenue, but everything will be in the managerial accounting, in the controlling areas. And internal orders also provide the capability of planning and monitoring. And then at the end of the day, allocating the cost. So three things are very important from internal order point of view. That internal order point has the capability for planning. So for example, you want to construct a building, you can put your planned cost into the internal order. Then actual cost happen. That is what we call monitoring. And then at the end of the day, it will be allocated, the cost will be allocated to some assets. So that is what we call allocating the cost. What SAP has done, they grouped internal order into different categories. For example, overhead cost, investment order, accrual orders, and then order with revenue. Now, for overhead cost, for example, you have purchased a car, you purchased a vehicle, and that vehicle you paid the cost. So it becomes an asset. Now, every now and then you need a maintenance of that on that car. That maintenance, what we call it, overhead cost, the repair of the vehicle, maybe the insurance, that is an overhead cost of that. So all these costs will be collected, and that is what we call overhead cost order, or this internal order is known as overhead cost order. Similarly, we have an investment order. This is again, for example, you're building a factory, or you're making another building for your business purposes. So that is kind of an investment, right? So and that is again internal order. You're collecting the cost of the buildings, manufacturing. So, but we name it investment order just for convenience purposes. But actual job is to collect the cost. Accrual order, again, that is the purpose is to collect the cost. So in the accrual order, actually, it is accumulating the cost. For example, you have a paid vacation. So every month, some amount will be added into your account, or into an internal order, that is, so at the end of the 12 months or 11 months, when you go for a vacation, all those amounts will be settled down against your withdrawal of that vacation. So we are accumulating your vacation salary in that order, or we are calculating your vacation days. Every month you earn like 3 days or 4 days. So at the end of the year, you got accumulated vacation. So if you're doing that kind of activity, we call that internal order an accrual order. And now with the order with revenue, that is to track both cost and revenue if your sales and distribution system is not in use. So if sales and distribution you are using, then it will be going directly to the controlling from the sales and distribution. But if it is not there, then you use this kind of internal order to collect the cost and collect the revenue. So any question on that, please do let me know.
Sir, ये last for any receiver वाली जो category है, so this is मतलब all others को इन्होंने जो order with revenue के अंदर जो last category है India में, so this is again जिसे कहते हैं कि wild card type का एक है कि सारी इसके अलावा segments के अलावा जो cost है वो इसमें चली जाएंगी.
Basically, I mean, they just separated it from the sales point of view, just for making more clear understanding about if there is any billing amount that will be collected, if it is, sales order that will be collected on that, on that internal order. or any receiver, anybody. Receiver could be your cost accounting. From the cost accounting point of view, any cost object. It could be a cost center. It could be it could be your activity type. It could be your processing. So those are the receivers. So it is not only that we are receiving from finance, maybe we are receiving something from your controlling as well, one of the object of the controlling. That what I understood.
ओके और सर ये एरोज अगर वो थोड़ा से मुझे कंफ्यूजिंग से लग रहे हैं, ये रेवेन्यूज के साथ एक ग्रीन कलर का एरो अगर आप देखें और ये फिर रेड कलर का एक एरो रिसीवर पे जा रहा है.
So maybe
ये
one of them is the revenue and the other is cost. So the revenue is a green one and the
Okay.
cost is the red one. Basically,
Okay.
we are collecting the cost.
Okay. Fine, sir. Fine.
Yeah. The whole purpose is that these are this is the internal order, and the purpose of internal order is to collect the cost, to collect the revenue. And this one, especially the last one, is collect the revenue as well as collect the cost. So now we can create the internal order. Basically, internal order has a master record, okay? And that consists of different sections, which is given on the screen, like assignment and control data and period and closing and general data. And we can use the internal order for planning, for collecting the cost, and for monitoring the cost. And at the end of the day, we can allocate the cost from this internal order. All internal orders, same master records. Only thing is the description is different. Description could be accrual order, or description could be your investment order or overhead cost order, something like that. But actual thing is the same. Now, order type is very important field. And this is from exam point of view as well. So there may be an exam question on the order type, 0400, for example. Now, this specify two types of order, whether this is a real order or a statistical order. So if it is a real order, real internal order, then what we can do is we can receive the cost and then we can distribute the cost. But if it is a statistical order, then we are just receiving the cost for reporting purposes. So from the statistical order, we are not distributing the cost or allocating the cost. Now, as we know that internal order is a temporary cost collector. We are collecting the cost until the project is done. So once the project is closed, then we will settle down all the cost to that particular assets, and the internal order will be closed. So we can say that internal order is a temporary cost collector for fixed assets. Maybe we purchased a car, or for the construction of a fixed assets. So we can use the internal order. Here, what we can do is we can put our estimate. Estimate for this vehicle is this. Estimate for this building is this. So this is our planned cost. When the actual cost happens, that we start collecting and we are doing the transaction on that. And then we have a commitment as well. So we'll talk about the commitment on the next slide, inshallah. So once we settle down the costs, we transfer all these costs from internal order to the fixed assets. And by the way, it is also possible that the cost from the internal order can be distributed in percentage. For example, we have 3 departments and we did the paint job for 3 departments. So we can distribute the cost among 3 departments, that every department has to bear that cost. So we can distribute and that again, that will be the settlement order settlement. and the rules of the settlement order will be declared. So according to the rules, the internal order cost will be distributed among different departments or different assets or whatever is there. Now, processing a commitment for an internal order. This is another interesting concept of commitment. I really faced one time a trouble when I was I requested for a purchase of a software services, and they committed. They made a commitment. Yani they assigned the amount for my purchase order like $7,000. All of a sudden, I receive an email that we need to add the bank charges, like for example $30 or $40. So now, once the commitment is made, I cannot change that commitment unless I remove the commitment and I recreate the commitment with another, $730. So what happens as soon as the commitment, they remove the commitment, that amount was assigned to another purchase order of someone else. So I lost that $7,000 immediately. So from there, I learned a lesson that, okay, whenever you create a purchase order and you got the commitment on that purchase order, you must execute that. And for any other extra amount, we have to create another purchase order, another commitment, another. So in that way, so basically what is happening is when you create a purchase requisition or you create a purchase order, and if your commitment management is activated in the managerial accounting or in the controlling area, if that is activated, then what will happen? You can assign the commitment of that amount for that purchase requisition or for that purchase order, either manually or automatically. When I submit a purchase requisition, it has to go through the authorities. They agreed and they approved. Once they approved, then purchasing order is then the purchasing department assigned that amount to my purchase order. That is what we call commitment. And that commitment will go to zero when I receive the goods. If I receive the partial amount, then this will be partially deducted from that. Whatever I received, that much amount will be deducted from that. Ultimately, when I receive all my goods, all my services, then the commitment will become zero. Means everything is all set. So you can put the commitment manually or you can add the commitment automatically. And once the purchase order is approved by the authorities, then automatically the commitment will be made. And why commitment is important? Because purchase order is a legal document. So if you issued a purchase order and later on you refuse to get that purchase order or you refuse to honor that purchase order, the other party can take you to the court and they can get their money through the court. So purchase order is not a simple document, it's a legal document. It has a legal value on that. For example, you make me an order of manufacturing 2 cars or 5 cars. Now I spend all my money and I purchase the raw material and I did the manufacturing for 5 cars. And if the party refuses, that is going to cost me a big loss, So I can go to the court and I can get my money back. So issuing the sales order means you must have to have that much money. And that money you can make sure through the commitment. Any question on that commitment, please?
No, sir, it's clear.
Now, we have like order settlement. Now, so we can use different techniques. One of them is allocation technique. You can use it with the internal order, So if you're using allocation technique with the internal order, that is what we call settlement. In that, what will happen is the internal order is credited and the receiver is debited. So for example, we have a cost center here, or we are having some amount for that internal order that we want to settle for that particular cost center or purchase or production order or project. So we will be using the settlement that will transfer the cost to these to these cost objects. Okay, for example, we are manufacturing some assets and we are collecting the cost on that internal order. It will be assigned, it will be settled with that assets. So what will happen? It will credit to this internal order and it will debit to this assets. So that is within the cost accounting, we are having debit and the credit. So these internal orders are short term, until, for example, we are constructing a building. It will take like 2 months or 3 months. So the life of this internal order will be 2 or 3 months. When the task is complete, the cost will be transferred to possible settlement receiver. That receiver could be a cost center or order or projects. If you see here in the previous slide where we had the question on from any receiver, you see that? So these receivers belongs to cost object, belongs to controlling or managerial accounting. And what are these receivers? If you see here, these receivers are cost center or production order or project or or assets or some sales order. So this process is called settlement. You see here, during the settlement, you can distribute the percentage or some amount or some equivalent number. So I did a paint job for 3 different departments. That amount will be distributed in a percentage. I did a carpet job. Carpet, for example, the size of department number 1 is almost double than the other one. So he will get like 50% cost. Other department will get 25% cost. So the settlement rule could be a distribution. Settlement rule could be allocation technique. Whatever the way you can allocate, you can do the allocation and the cost will be distributed among the different possible receivers. Now, once you do the settlement, if you see, this is before settlement, all the cost on the internal order, we are collecting all the cost. And the total actual amount is 65,000. And this is the balance. Now, once you settle the cost, then the balance will be 0. The settlement amount before total amount is 65, settlement amount is 6,500, and the balance is 0. So this is after settlement, and this is before settlement. So this was a topic in our for the internal order and its settlement. Now we have like Assets Explorer. This Assets Explorer will display you each and everything about that asset. So you can see all transactions that have been posted for that asset or to that assets. So you can see the overview of all activities for that particular assets. For example, you can see the planned depreciation or posted depreciation, area per period or for a particular year. You can drill down the details of all financial accounting transactions about that particular assets. So this is the Assets Explorer. I believe we have one question on this Assets Explorer, and they may ask about all these 5 points, which are 6 points, which are mentioned here. What you can see available on the Assets Explorer screen. So it could be a selection of depreciation area, planned values, book values, transaction or fiscal year. So they may ask you from these options. Now we have like period net activities for a particular fixed assets, depreciation or periodic depreciation and fixed assets. So now, if you see here, we are having like, we can have different depreciation area. This is the main thing that we want to discuss here. Different depreciation area. So, for assets, balance, and transaction, we need to evaluate differently for various purposes. For example, you can use different depreciation method for your business and for your tax authorities. And this is legal and this is allowed. And many companies are doing this thing. So they are having like, one method of depreciation for their own business and one method of depreciation for the tax purposes. So that is what we can say, that many company uses two or more methods of depreciation and it is common acceptable practice for the companies and by the government as well. So for example, a company can do the depreciation of its equipment over the 10 years for its financial statement. So in my business document, my assets will be depreciated after 10 years. But for tax authorities, I can use 7 years. That is possible. Or maybe in my business, I can say I will be doing depreciation on equal amount for 5 years. But in business purposes, I can say no, 50% of the depreciation I will be doing on my first year, and second year I'll be doing like 10%, and then another 10%, another 10%. So 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. So after 5 years, I will be able to have depreciation of all my assets to zero or something like that. So that is also possible. Why? Because when we purchased a car, for example, immediately after purchasing the car, you try to sell the car, the price will be like so much down. I remember that when I went for purchasing a car for myself, and that was a demo car, and that only had a 500 kilometers on its speedometer. So when I purchased that car, I got like, 1/3 of the price was down. So for 500 kilometers, I got like, 1 or 3% price less. So similarly, when we purchase a car or purchase an equipment, immediately the price goes down. So business, they can take benefit of that facility, and they can, charge extra for the initial years and charge lesser for the later years. We do have like some central data in depreciation area. These are the parameters that you can pass on for the depreciation calculation. So you can specify that you want to create different depreciation method. This is the place where you can, and for the tax purposes, you need a different. I remember one example of Coca-Cola factory. Some of my students, they went for the internship, and one day or 2 days they were working in a bottle checking area. So they have to check the top of the bottle that the bottle is not broken. So they told me that as per the law, the bottle should be replaced after 3 times of use. This is the law. But they say we found the bottles of Coca-Cola bottles, those were manufactured in 1965. So I'm talking of 91, 92. So imagine until that time, so they were reusing the bottle again and again. And every 3 months, they were booking the depreciation, and they were, making it zero cost. So businesses can do, different stuff. Now, the depreciation is actually posted in assets accounting and in general ledgers after the posting run is made. So when we make the depreciation posting run, that is the time when the posting will be made to fixed assets. Postings will be made to general ledger for those depreciation. And depreciation is posted to the correspondence depreciation account in the general ledger and to the controlling cost object in the assets master records. So in assets master record, we have some information in the cost accounting, and some we are maintaining in the financial accounting. So the depreciation run will post to both the accounting. And the exam question will be the depreciation run can be the direct or indirect, or the batch mode. So this is an exam question. The depreciation run can be in the direct mode or batch mode. So they may ask you how many types of depreciation run we can have. Either we can run direct or batch mode. So keep in mind from the exam point of view. We have a transaction type. So for example, when we do the asset posting, we do the purchases like an acquisition. We might be retiring the assets. We might be doing some allocation of the assets. We are doing some depreciation or some appreciation. We purchase the land, and the land get appreciated every year. If we purchase an equipment, they got depreciation. So they got depreciated every year. So any types of asset posting you made, you must have to have a transaction type. So when we do the debit and credit, we do have a posting key that we discussed in the financial accounting. Like one of them is a debit posting, one of them is a credit posting. That is what we decide with the help of posting keys. In addition to that, for every assets transaction, we must have to have a transaction type. And this is 3-digit code for that particular transaction type. And there is one question in the exam on the transaction type as well. So keep in mind this one. So, and this transaction type must be included in the posting of an assets account. And this transaction type is necessary for assets accounting. This is kind of a must. And it tells you, because it specifies exactly where the asset posting is listed on the history sheet. So this is very important. And yes, a transaction type is in addition to the posting key. So I think we'll stop here today because now we are having plant maintenance and plant structure. This is related to plant maintenance. So the topic of our today was on assets accounting and then internal orders. So we are done with that. So I hope tomorrow we will be working on from lesson 7 to onward on our assets, enterprise asset management, or you can say plant maintenance, inshallah. So thank you very much for that. If you have any question, please ask me.